Alright then gang, so the next component we're going to look at is the tooltip component. And this is a little information bubble that pops up with more information when you hover over something. You see them quite a lot in forms to explain form fields. So you can see them in action if you hover over these buttons and notice how it appears in different places. So to the top, the side, the bottom, etc. So you can easily configure this with a data attribute. Now they're really easy to set up, but they do require one extra step. A small amount of JavaScript is required to initialize any tooltips you add to your page. So let's take a look at how to do it. Up on the image. So it's in the intro section. At the bottom of that, we have an image right here. We're going to surround that with a tooltip. Now, the way we do this is by making a span, first of all, and I'm going to take the image and put it inside that span tag. Now, I'm going to give this a class, and that class is going to be TT. Now, this is not a Bootstrap class. This is just a class I've made up, TT for tooltip, so that when we start to use JavaScript to implement the tooltips, to trigger them if you like, it's going to look for anything with a class of TT. You can call it something different if you wish. Anyway, but by the way, don't call it tooltip, because Bootstrap is going to use that under the hood when it starts to work its magic in the JavaScript. So anything else. All right then, so after that, I'm also going to give this a data attribute, and that data attribute is to say where we want this tooltip to show. Do we want it at the top when you hover over, to the side, or at the bottom, etc. So let's say data-bootstrap-placement, like so, and set that equal to bottom in this case. And then finally, we just need a title attribute, and in here is the text that we're going to show when a user hovers over this image, so the information in the tooltip. So I'm just going to paste in a sentence right here. Oops, not that one. We don't want that. That's for the form. Okay, so we'll just say Net Ninja book cover. All right, so let me try this out. At the minute, if I save it and hover over the book, nothing is going to work. And that is because, remember, I said that in order for this to work, we have to add a little bit of JavaScript. So there are just a handful of different components in Bootstrap that when you use them, you have to trigger them or start them with a bit of JavaScript. It's not hard to do. Just scroll down to the end of the page, inside the body, at the end of the script right here, after that one, we're going to paste in another script. Dead simple. All I do is create a constant called tooltips, and I set it equal to document.querySelectAll, and I grab anything on the page with a class of TT. Remember, that was the class I gave the span tag. So we have then a collection of elements, because there might be 3 or 4 tooltips on the page, right? They're all now going to be stored inside tooltips. Then we cycle through that collection using a for each, and for each tooltip, which I refer to as T, we fire a function. And all we do is create a new Bootstrap tooltip, and we pass in the element, and that creates it for us, and that takes care of everything. So that's all we have to do, and now we can add as many tooltips on the page as we like, because this is going to find all of them. As long as they have that class of TT, they're going to work. So if I save this now and come to the top and hover over, now we can see that tooltip, and you can see that the arrow is at the top and the message is at the bottom. That's because we said the placement was at the bottom. All right, cool. So now let's add some tooltips in the form. So I've created 2 comments where we're going to add these. This is the first input, and it's going to be inside the input group. So all we're going to do is create another input group text like this. So let me copy that and paste it down here. And this icon is going to be something different. We want it to be some kind of question mark. So I'm going to use question hyphen circle, like so. So that's a question mark in a circle. And also, I'm going to give this a class of text muted. Okay, so that's the icon. And if we take a look at this, we're going to see that. If I scroll down here, we can see that. Now I want to implement the tooltip so that when we hover over this, we see that tooltip. So we need to surround this icon with the tooltip. So I'm going to say span right here. And again, I need to give this a class of TT so that our JavaScript picks it up. I'll take the closing span and place it after the icon, like so. And then inside here, we need to say where the placement is. So data-bootstrap-placement. And again, that's going to be equal to the bottom. You can use a different value if you want. And then the title, which I'm going to set equal to the thing I pasted before. Oops, it's gone now from a clipboard. Let me just grab it again, paste it in. So enter an email address we can reply to. Okay, so before we test this out, I'm just going to copy all of this right here, and I'm going to place it down here where we have this tooltip as well. So again, it's inside the input group for the second input, and we're going to use the same icon. This time, we'll just say in here, pretty self-explanatory. Can I spell this? Explanatory, really. ... Alright, so if we now hover over this one, then we can see enter an email we can reply to. And for the name, pretty self-explanatory, really. Awesome. So there we go, my friends. That's how we create tooltips. Dead simple. Just create the span with any class except for tooltip, and then create the placement, the title, which is the text inside the tooltip, and then surround whatever element you want the tooltip to be for. And then finally, in the script, just create a script like this to trigger them.